in the grocery industry, numbers are everything, margins are everything. Grocery stores operate on such razor thin margins. So if you don't handle those the right way, they can get away from you like really, really quick.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Growing a consumer packaged goods or CPG brand is uniquely challenging. Not only will you need a product that consumers are willing to pay for, but you'll also be required to win over your distributors and partners. Even if you succeed in developing your customers' channels, you might still fail if you can't figure out how to manage your supply chain and cash flow. In today's episode, we have our guest Aman Ailani from Sahol Cold Brew, who discusses the unique challenges and important metrics for a consumer brand and a food and beverage company. We also had a chance to discuss the secrets behind his company's exponential growth in the Boston market. Finally, we touched on how LinkedIn has helped him raise awareness about his brand in a space where he competes with powerful brands like Starbucks. Let me introduce Aman to you. Born and raised in Dubai, Aman Ailani grew up around a coffee culture. Arabian coffee pots, rich aromas of dark roast beans, and the sweet smell of dates filled every home he was in. While still very young and his company early stage, he has already created a buzz about Sahol Cold Brew around Boston and social media, with expansion of distribution forecasted for 2021. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Sam, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, amazing. So to kick things off, I would like to start with your personal story, as well as what you are focusing on these days.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Aman Ailani, born and raised in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Lived there for the first 17 years of my life, and I came over to America in 2016 for college. Had a really, really great experience in college at Bentley University, just outside of Boston. Studied entrepreneurship. I played on the golf team there. And yeah, I started my cold brew coffee company.
So before we get deeper into that, and I obviously have ton of questions on your introduction, but one question that we ask everyone is going to be your perspective on growth. What does growth mean to you, Aman?
Yeah. I was really excited to be here and talk about this. So for us in, the CPG, FMCG industry, growth is can be seen as this big thing, like you're in every supermarket, every grocery store, every brand in the country. But the reality is, and the honest truth is that for smaller businesses, for emerging brands, that can honestly be really dangerous sometimes. And for me, for our company right now, growth looks like just being slow, being strategic, taking our time and making sure we have our finances and we have our money in the right place before we, just blitz scale and get super big all of a sudden.
So that's a very interesting perspective. I have not heard that before. So when you say it could be dangerous, my assumption is going to be you are speaking more in line towards spending way too much and then running out of cash, right? So how do you typically plan in a way that you are not burning yourself out?
Yeah, I think for us, so just a little background on our product. So we make a cold brew coffee, so it's like an iced coffee in a can, and they're sold in grocery stores. So just for us, it could be really easy for us to pump a whole ton of cash into, brokers, merchandisers, distributors, and get our product into 5,000 stores in the first year. But then if we don't have the ability or the finances to then support that placement in those stores within our first year, that's not really going to be doing much for us. So for us, growth specifically within the CPG, FMCG space is really just going slowly about it and making sure that we're taking one step at a time in the right order. And for right now, that looks like starting in about 20 stores just here in New England, measuring our velocity, measuring our data, and then using that to our advantage to grow in the right way.
Okay, so velocity is a very important term that you mentioned that, and I have read you talk about that on your LinkedIn profile as well. So, what is velocity when it comes to cold brew industry? Could you touch a bit on that?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, velocity essentially just measures the speed or the rate at which your product is selling. So, for example, for us, so a case for us is 12 cans in one case. And for us, velocity looks like how fast are we selling a case? So currently that number is between 9 and 14 days. It takes us to sell one case, which is really good for the coffee space, but specifically the perishable product space, which is the broader category in which we operate in. So that's really important for us. And basically, the higher your velocity, the quicker it is, the more frequently that grocery stores have to reorder your product, the better it looks because it shows that you're a fast moving product. It shows that people are not just buying it, but they're returning for more. So that's just one of the many, many reasons that velocity, specifically case velocity, is so important for us.
Okay, interesting. So I don't know, where you are in terms of your growth journey, and I don't know how much revenue you are doing at this point of time. But when you measure the velocity, how are you measuring? What is your system landscape like? Are you doing accounting on QuickBooks? Do you have any systems in place at this point of time to measure your KPIs? How are you running your operations?
Absolutely, absolutely. So QuickBooks is really important for us in the grocery industry. Numbers are everything, margins are everything. Grocery stores operate on such razor thin margins. So if you don't handle those the right way, they can get away from you like really, really quick. So that's just one way that we measure what we're doing. But specifically, also, another way we do it is just through our relationships with grocery stores, with our distributor, stuff like that. The more information we can get from them, the better it usually is. So they're really kind to us and they provide us with a lot of really solid information on, how our product is selling, in what stores, in what channel, and at what velocity, which is the most important part.
Okay, interesting. So when you talk about these different stores, are these mom and pop stores? Are you at the big brand stores at this point of time? Can you touch your customer landscape if you don't mind? You don't have to name them, but just tell me, how many big stores you have, how many mom and pop you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in around 15 stores in the New England area right now. We've only launched for about 2.5 months, so we are very, very new to the market, but we've been able to grow really quickly in that span of time. Currently, our target accounts are natural food stores, organic food stores, co-op grocery stores. We aren't in any big box retailers yet, but that's definitely an avenue and a route that we want to go down in the future. So I would say like organic natural food stores and kind of like the higher end grocery stores are our target market right now.
Okay, interesting. And where did this idea come from for the cold brew? Do you have any background in coffee? Does your family have any background in coffee? How did you come about this idea for cold brew?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I actually never drank coffee until my freshman year in college. I was staying up late one night very early on in my first few weeks, and I needed something to keep me going. I needed a way to stay awake to study, and I had nothing available to me. So I go to the vending machine and I grab one of those refrigerated like frappe type cold brews, and I open it and I drink, and it's so much sugar in it that the coffee doesn't even work. I have a sugar crash. So I think, okay, like there has to be a way to solve this. So I buy my own cold brew maker actually, and I take it back home with me to Dubai, and I started visiting local coffee shops, local roasters, and I started making my own cold brew, which I do for the next 4 years. And over the course of those 4 years, I basically learned the ins and outs of coffee, cold brew, and everything there is to it before my senior year, which is when we actually have to start and launch our own businesses in order to graduate. So my professor looks at me and he goes, "You make that cold brew, right? The coffee?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, why don't you just put that in a can?" So I started talking to manufacturers, I started talking to producers, and one thing led to another, and here we are today in about 15 stores across Boston.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, obviously there are a lot of different cold brews, and you mentioned that sugar is one of the factors that could be your differentiator. But coffee market in my opinion, could be crowded, right? So how are you differentiating yourself in the market?
For sure, for sure. It's a really competitive landscape, especially in the grab and go beverages and single serve. But the biggest thing we have going for us is really the fact that we're all natural. So we don't have any preservatives, we have no additives, we have no sugar, no dairy. We're gluten free, zero carbs. We're honestly, our product is 0 calories, and the only two ingredients we have are coffee grinds and filtered water. So it's a really natural process, and that's kind of the biggest thing we have going for us. But also another thing that we really leverage is the fact that we're a local independent brand. I think our consumers and our target audience really resonates with that. They realize that when they buy our product, when they drink our coffee, they're supporting a local brand. And yeah, we appreciate that support, and that's a big reason of why we've come so far.
Interesting. So when you say local brand, does that mean the local brand from New England? Because when we were talking about your name, your name was Hall in the pre-show, and that has the Irish meaning. So typically, when you talk about local brand, I have seen some of the Canadian brands here, and they would probably have the Canadian flag. So how are you communicating your local values?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we're local. We're local to New England. That's kind of our thing. That's kind of what we do. We communicate our local values mostly with our retail partnerships. So a lot of the stores that we link up with, a lot of the partners that we have, they're all local stores. They support other local products, and yeah, we make that really clear on social media, and we make that really clear in everything that we do through our marketing efforts.
Okay, interesting. So since you mentioned that the preservatives, right, and that seems to be the key factor in your product. So how does that differ from the manufacturing perspective, and why the other brands that we have in the market, for example, Starbucks? I'm pretty sure you are probably competing with them too, right? So why are they not able to do what you are doing? That is number one. And number two is, how is your manufacturing process going to change just because you are not using any preservatives?
Yeah, well, I think obviously Starbucks is doing a lot of things right for them to get as big as they've gotten. I think Starbucks, has really cracked the code on a lot of things, but how we differentiate ourselves is really just through the way we roast and we brew our coffee. So our coffee is roasted more on the lighter side. Um, it's not a dark roast at all. It's very fruity, it's very floral, it's very chocolatey, which is what our consumers really, really love. So that's something that's working really well for us. And from a manufacturing side, not too different. I would say we're a lot smaller manufacturing wise than Starbucks is, but we make the most of that and we really maximize our dollars.
Okay, so from the process perspective, I would like to dig deeper into that. So from your facility, if I take a tour of your facility, walk me through your facility, how that is going to look like. Is it going to have just a brewer or grinder? Do you have commercial grinders right now? Do you not have commercial grinders? So how's your manufacturing facility at this point of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the CPG space, there's something known as co-packers, stands for contract packers or contract packaging, and basically what that is instead of owning your own facilities and buying your own equipment, you are paying another company that already has facilities to make your product, and you pay them on a flat rate per piece basis. So that's what we do. That's the biggest reason we've been able to stay so lean. We've been able to stay honestly profitable from such an early point. Is we haven't invested mass amounts of capital into equipment. So just a high overview of what the facility that we currently work out of looks like. We obviously have big brewing vats where our coffee actually gets brewed. Coffee is ground and then put in there and it's steeped with cold water. But apart from that, we also have a full canning line, which is where the actual coffee gets filled into cans, the label gets put on, the can lid is applied, and then it's kind of like shot out into like a tray where it's then packed into 12 packs. So it's honestly pretty basic. Another big thing is water filtration. That's really important in good coffee. Good coffee starts with good water. So our filtered water is pretty big in what we do, and yeah, it's a super neat process.
Aman, we wanted to talk about the manufacturing process. So obviously, we spoke about different collaborators that you mentioned, and you mentioned about your contract packaging company. So I'm simply looking for the information, number one, that is flowing back and forth, the inventory that is flowing back and forth, and how your manufacturing process looks when you, let's say, initiate the job order at the start of your manufacturing process and you have the finished good. So walk me through the entire manufacturing process.
Yeah, absolutely. So our coffee is made with a blend of Central South American and African beans. So those beans are obviously roasted to the appropriate roast level, and then they're ground. After they're ground, the coffee beans are then put in like a massive container, almost, if you can imagine, like a vat, and it's filled with cold water. So the coffee and the water, they kind of mix, and it kind of just sits there for 24 hours. And then that resulting liquid essentially is what our actual product is. So that's what cold brew is. It's coffee grinds steeped in cold water for 24 hours. So that liquid is then put through a canning line, and obviously cans flow through the line. So the can comes in, it gets filled, the lid gets added, it gets labeled, and then it shoots out where it's then packed into trays with 12 cans each. So it's a super, super quick process, but the actual brewing takes over close to 24 hours to make sure that it's the right level.
Okay, so when you did your research, and I'm pretty sure you compared this with the other manufacturing verticals. So how was the brewing different from the other manufacturing verticals that you compared?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were looking to start this, we shopped around and we talked to a couple different contract manufacturers. We essentially just landed on the one that we did, mostly more than anything, just because of the relationship that we had. The conversation just flowed easier. I was able to trust them a lot more. So as far as verticals go, this was pretty much the only way that cold brew can be made, especially in the way that we wanted it. But the eventual company that we settled on, solely because of the relationship, and they've been amazing to work with, especially in our industry. It's the relationship is everything from demand forecasting, planning to actual execution, storage, and then obviously getting the product out to stores. They've been just rock stars in the whole process, and I can't thank them enough. So that relationship is really crucial, and it's the biggest reason we went with them.
Okay, so when you were exploring these vendors, and sometimes, it could be a challenging relationship to manage, right? Because I don't know, how much volume you have,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how much volume their other customers have, right? And
yeah.
probably you are going to be a small fish, and I don't know, again, how big this manufacturer is. So how do you manage the expectation, especially if you are getting a lot of different bulk orders from your customers, and you have to deliver on time? If you don't deliver, then you lose the customer. So it's sort of the double-edged sword there, right? So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to communication, right? So right from the beginning, I let them know, and I think they were very appreciative. I was like, look, I'm not going to be your biggest customer by any means, but we have a really solid base of accounts, and we're going to have a really great distributor. So essentially, we just deal with one large purchase order at a time that goes straight to a distributor, and then the distributor then essentially distributes it to the store. So we don't supply like one case at a time, but we do one massive order, and then the distributor kind of like parcels that out to stores as and when they need it. So that was honestly a big part of it, just making our communication just very clear with them from the beginning, saying we're going to be consistent, we're going to be great, we're going to hold up our end of the bargain, but this is what you're getting from us. And they really appreciated it, and they've been, like I said, just amazing to work with.
Okay, amazing. And I mean, based on the amount of duration that you mentioned, you have actually made the phenomenal progress here, in my opinion. Okay, if it is really the work of
Yeah,
2.5 months,
thank
that's
you,
that's
thank you,
impressive.
thank you.
So let's say if I'm the e-commerce merchant, and I probably want to start my own brand. Okay, and I'm actually trying to set up all of these channels and customers as well. So where would you recommend me starting?
I think the biggest thing is once you have a product that you think can really do something, and once you have a product that you think customers are willing to open their wallets and actually purchase, the biggest thing is testing it. So one thing we did is we did a small test. So basically, we made 70 cases, and then I hit up 70 of my friends, 70 people, and I asked them to buy one case each and let me know their thoughts. Once I knew that, okay, the majority of the people like the product, think this is good, would actually buy this, then we went ahead and started talking to grocery stores and started getting into stores. But by far the biggest thing is just testing your assumptions, which is really, really common in the startup space.
Well, so I'm actually gonna challenge you on that, okay?
Please.
Testing with your friends is not really a good test, to be honest. Okay, the reason for that is because they are going to be nice to you. They are going to probably, and this is not a very expensive product, right? So they should be willing to take out, let's say, $5 or $10 or whatever your coffee is cost, right? So it's not really a good test. You can't actually do your demand forecasting based on a test that is done on friends.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely.
so how would you overcome that?
Absolutely, and I'll be honest with you. I wish I wish we didn't have to do it just on Friends, but I launched during COVID, and I don't think it would have been appropriate to stand outside a grocery store and ask people to talk to me outside a grocery store. But no, I completely agree. That was definitely a risky test, if you want to call it. But look, long term, big picture has paid off because the information that we gathered from that, even if it was from my friends, it's paid off. We're seeing great velocity. We're in, like you said, we've had great growth. It's paid off basically. So if I had to go back, would I test again on my friends? Probably not, but I didn't really have another option at that time, and I think that's better than nothing.
Interesting. So what was the next step? So in this case, maybe you got lucky or whatever. I would not recommend anybody testing on their friends, but yeah, you had your challenges with respect to COVID, which is completely understandable, right? So what was the next natural step? So when you put this on grocery stores based on the test that you have done with your friends, did you select any specific store? Did you have any data to support which stores you want to go after? What was that process like?
For sure, for sure. So our product, just the nature of it, sugar-free, dairy-free, natural product, it performs best in natural food stores. So yes, we can go, to the big stores like Walmart, Costco, and we're going to see amazing. I'm sure we would have seen amazing turns there. But getting into those stores, as you might know, can be expensive and can be costly for a young startup brand. So the biggest kind of store we tried to go after was just natural, organic food stores, health shops, and that's where even to this day we are seeing our most success.
Okay, interesting. So when you interacted with these guys, what were some of the questions that they asked? Because obviously they didn't know you, they didn't know your brand, right? And they must be pitched by a lot of different brands. So what were some of the initial questions that you got?
Yeah. So a typical buyer. So we talk to grocery buyers, and a typical buyer pitch. You start off, you give a little background on your brand. You let them know who you distribute your product with, and then the next natural question is, how much is your product? Like, how much do we pay to get it? How many cans come in a case? What promotional offers do you guys do? What marketing support do you do? And essentially a lot of generic questions, but to cut through that noise, what they're really asking is, can we trust you? I think the biggest thing buyers want to know is, you are this brand that we're going to bring in. We're going to give you shelf space. We're going to put you, in a position where you can sell it. But can we actually trust you? So essentially, to cut through all their noise, is they just asking, prove to me that we can trust you. And building that trust is very important.
So, okay, so that's very interesting because I would like to know a little bit more about that. So, how do you build trust in case of a food product, right? Because it could be a huge risk for them. You could be anybody and you could be selling anything. And
Yeah.
because of that, there could be life-threatening situation, right? So let's say if I'm the buyer and if I've never bought anything from you, how would you build that trust?
Yeah, and honestly, well, from a high level, the manufacturing facility that we have, we're on amazing terms with the FDA, which is, I would assume, a great place to start. But that's never come up. What's actually come up is, prove to me that by putting your brand on the shelf, it's going to sell. Like, prove to me that I'm not silly for giving you a shot. And honestly, the first store is the hardest to convince. But then after that, what we can do is we can just use the data that we have, the sales data that we have, the velocity data we have, and just use those KPIs to pitch to other stores. And to be very frank with you, it's pitching to our 10th store, and getting into our 10th store was way easier than getting to our first store. The first one was really the biggest one to overcome.
Yeah, it's always like that. Yeah, first one is always the difficult because you don't have data, you don't have trusted brand, you don't have a champion who can really communicate for you, right? So yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree that the first one is definitely going to be difficult. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome other than sales?
Um, Trying to think here. I honestly think just big picture, the biggest thing to overcome was the fact that I was a 21-year-old boy at the time. Well, I'm 22 now, but I was a 21-year-old boy who was trying to take this big risk, and try to convince them that I should be the next guy they should be giving a chance to. That was definitely the hardest thing. I got overlooked a lot. A lot of people wouldn't work with me just because they said I had no experience, but I was willing to build that experience, and everyone has to start somewhere. So I was just really grateful for the first few people that gave me a shot and gave me an opportunity to show what I can do.
Yeah, and that could be a very difficult situation because I was in your shoes, what, 20 years back?
Yeah, yeah,
And it was very hard to convince. So, okay, tell me what you have done.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's so true. Like guys come to you with that question, or grocery buyers come to you with that question. Like there are all these. We carry four big name brands. Why should I give you a chance? Like there's no guarantee that you will sell as much as they do. And I say, that's right. There is no guarantee. But by taking a chance on me, you're placing your bet on something that could become the next big thing in the world of coffee. So it's been really fun trying to explore that and just continuing to overcome, all these obstacles.
Okay, amazing. So I don't know if you are invested at this point of time. Do you have any investors backing you? How much was the capital that you had to secure? And again, you don't need to be specific. I'm simply trying to get ballpark here. Let's say if somebody is trying to start the coffee business, what should they keep in mind?
Yeah, I think there's this real notion, especially on LinkedIn and other things, that all you see are these big brands that raise 5, 10 million, and they go after the big retailers. But I'm going to be very honest with you. We've put in very very little money. We have not raised investor money. It's family backed, it's family owned. So without getting into specifics, like it's an average production run would not be costing you more than $2,000. Like it wouldn't be costing you more than $1 to $2,000 to make a full run of production. But we've had to be really smart with our money. We get pitched a lot of services, we get pitched a lot of things. People try to convince us that we need this, we need that, and the honest truth is that you don't. What you really need is a good sales pitch. You need a solid product, and you need numbers in place to show that your product is selling. And that's what we've been able to do. And yes, we are growing a little slower than some of the bigger brands, but we're growing, and we're taking one step after another. And I'm really excited to see how the future goes.
Okay, interesting. And I noticed that you are very active on LinkedIn as well. And that is definitely one of my areas where I like to focus during my podcast interviews because obviously LinkedIn could be powerful. So tell me why you are on LinkedIn. That is number one. And number two, what is your biggest channel in terms of revenue? Obviously, stores are there, but are you able to recruit some of these stores from the LinkedIn, or are they coming to you from website or personal interaction? Tell me, how are your revenue channels set up and where you are acquiring them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer the second question first. All of our revenue basically comes from the stores that we get, which who work with our distributor. So our distributor has, a massive list of stores that they service, and we basically through that list we're able to get, pitch our product to stores because we know that they already use our distributor. So that's the biggest one. It's brick and mortar sales. And then LinkedIn, have we made any sales because of LinkedIn? Not really, probably not. But the biggest thing that LinkedIn does is it helps us to develop our brand awareness. Being a startup brand, being a younger brand, we don't have the same national reputation that other brands do. So by posting every day and by, kind of letting people in behind the scenes of what it takes to run a CPG brand, I'm able to build a really solid brand awareness through just vulnerability, being transparent, and to be fully honest, like I give away all our secrets on LinkedIn. Apart from our gross margins and unit economics, you can find out everything that I've ever needed to figure out about my brand on my LinkedIn. So just being transparent has really helped us, and we're starting to gain a nice following, and people are tuning into my posts. So that's pretty cool.
Right. So you mentioned that you don't have the relatable ROI from LinkedIn, but you do believe that LinkedIn is somehow helping you. So let's say the folks who are not on LinkedIn, what would be your recommendation for them?
Absolutely. There's LinkedIn and TikTok are very similar in the sense that there's a massive, massive content deficit on there. There's way more eyeballs than there are thumbs, which is to say that there are more people looking at posts than actually posting. and there's only 0.5% of people who are active on LinkedIn post once a week. So organic reach is huge. And I think that if you just show up and if you just start talking and if you just start sharing your experiences, it doesn't even have to be deep. It doesn't have to be insightful or analytical. Just start sharing your experiences, connect with people from your industry and, the greater industry with which you're part of. And I think you can really see some pretty cool things happen.
Okay, Aman, so that's pretty much it for today. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd love to just encourage people that if they're thinking of starting a business, it's all talk and it's all noise until you actually start doing it. So, if there is that idea you have in your head, just take one actionable step to put it down on paper. And I think that, the natural course of events and the natural flow of events can only happen after that. So would really just encourage people to take one actionable step to launch their business.
That's a great advice, I would say, for the newer entrepreneurs, and that's going to help a lot. And your insight is going to help a lot as well. So I thank you for your time and insight.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. It was great being with you.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Aman or Sahol, head over to www.sipsahol.com. It's SIPSAHOL.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Brian Burke from sellyourmac.com, who touches on his growth secrets and how they became the fastest growing company on INC 5000 3 times. Also the interview with Corey Warfield from Corey Connects, where he discussed how to hack LinkedIn algorithms and grow your company using LinkedIn strategies. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.